Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name's Dr. Claire Killingback and I'm a senior lecturer in physiotherapy. And in this video, I'm just going to talk through really briefly what's the difference between research, audit, and service evaluation. So, just to give you definitions of the key terms, research is what we do when we're trying to generate new knowledge and we're trying to add to a body of knowledge. Audit, that's when you're going to do something, you're going to measure clinical practice against a very specific standard to see whether you're meeting that standard or not. A service evaluation is where you're trying to judge the quality of a particular service. So let's have a look at that as an example. So imagine you're working on a medical ward and you notice that a number of your patients have had falls whilst they've been an inpatient. So you want to know whether your ward is doing all it can to really be minimising the risk for patients falling while they are staying on the ward, based on the recommendations of the National Audit or Inpatient Falls Report. And so to do that, you would look at what that audit is requiring in terms of the standards, and then you would produce a series of documents where you would say, okay, are we meeting these standards? Are we doing X, Y, Z that the report is recommending? And then you complete that audit cycle by saying, actually, no, we're not doing this or we're not doing that, so we probably need to start doing those things. So it's an audit because you've got a specific standard, and then you're looking to see whether you meet that standard. Now, if you were on the ward and actually you wanted to evaluate the service, what you could do is you could give a survey to patients and their relatives when they arrive and when they leave to see how satisfied they are with the service and whether they've got any recommendations for you for improving. So that would be a service evaluation. Now, if you were to do this as a research study, perhaps you work on the ward and there is a specific exercise intervention that you want to test for inpatients, patients who've had a fall to reduce their risk of falling again. And so, to do that as a research study, you'd need to apply to get research ethics. Then you would need to design the study, carry out the study, collect data, and possibly even follow up with patients after they've left the hospital to see whether the intervention that you did on the ward made a difference to them falling again. So that's just an example of, working on a ward, but actually three different ways that you could be looking at the quality of the service, depending on whether you're doing a research, an audit, or a service evaluation. So, what is research? And I'm going to go into research in a little bit more detail simply because if you get good research skills, they are the building blocks of doing a good audit or a good service evaluation, which is why universities focus on that, because it's not just about giving you research skills, but it's about giving the skills that you need to actually be evaluating the service and looking at the quality of it when you're working. So research, so two different definitions from different places. So dictionary definition, so research is that detailed study of a subject, especially in order to discover new information or reach a new understanding. And it's the new that's really important when it comes to research. You do research because you want to generate new knowledge. The other definition of research that I think is really good, which comes from the research excellence framework, and that says it's a process or investigation leading to new insights. Again, you'll see the word news there, and making sure that they are effectively shared. So, research involves a process. Let's have a look at that process. Now, this is a real oversimplification of the process. There are lots of other steps in between, but I think it's important to develop your research skills with layers of understanding and that I don't go too deeply with the knowledge too quickly and put you off. I don't want to put you off research. I love research. So, the research process, the first thing you really need to do is you really need to be reviewing the literature, because if someone else has done a really similar study to you, in fact, maybe they've done the exact study you want to do, you don't necessarily need to redo that study because that would almost be a bit of waste of money. So, it would be a bit unethical. But normally, you're looking to do a study perhaps in a different population. And so that would be new knowledge because you'd be looking at a different group of people that you'd be collecting it from. But you start with looking at the literature. You then want to select an appropriate research design. So that depends what you want to find out. It could be a quantitative design, it could be a qualitative, or it could be a mixed methods design. Once you know what design is going to be best, then you need to formulate your research question. And actually, these could be interchangeable. Sometimes it's that you want to formulate your question first and then you select your research design. So it's quite iterative. They can go back and forth because you want to choose the research design that is going to give you the answer to the research question that you need based on the new knowledge that you're wanting to generate. You're then going to collect your relevant data, you're going to analyze and interpret your findings, and then you're going to write up and publish those findings. So that's kind of an overview of the research process. You need to select an appropriate research design, and that depends on the question that you are trying to answer. So, just as an overview here, selecting an appropriate design. So, are you trying to understand the human experience? Because if you are, qualitative research can be great because it gives you insight into that lived experience, those multiple realities of people who are living with a particular condition or have been through a particular rehabilitation service. Are you trying to measure and quantify to test a hypothesis? Because if you are, that's where quantitative can be really helpful. And quantitative and qualitative, we need both of them to really understand, like to get the full answer. Quantitative is great for telling us, does this intervention work? Qualitative is brilliant for telling us why that intervention may work or may not work. But then actually, you might think about, has the question been asked before? And are there enough published articles on that already that instead of going out and doing primary research, you could do a literature review, which is secondary research, when you were just going to draw on the primary research that has already been done to do a really well developed summary synthesis of that research for readers. So I like pictures. I understand things way better when I see pictures. So I'm going to mention these terms again: primary and secondary research. So when you're thinking about your design, you're trying to work out, okay, am I going to do primary research or am I going to do secondary research? So with primary research, you're thinking, is it a quantitative design? Is it qualitative, or is it mixed methods? And then you're going to go and collect the data yourself. Secondary research, you could look at doing a systematic review or a narrative review or a literature review done systematically or a scoping review. There are lots and lots of different types of review, so we don't need to go into that now. But just to say, when you do secondary research, you're using other people's primary research to be providing a really thorough synthesis. And I also wanted to touch on this hierarchy in research design. So, at the very top of that hierarchy will be things like systematic reviews, clinical practice guidelines, because they are drawing on the full range of research that is underneath them to be informing the decisions that they're going to be making. At the lower end of the quality perspective, there will be things like, case report, case series, narrative reviews, editorials, because they just don't follow that same level of rigor necessarily. And when we talk about rigor, we're talking about quality of research. So that's a really brief overview there of research audit and service evaluation. If you're getting value from these videos, then please feel free to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it with anyone else who you think may benefit from the content. But I really hope that was helpful.